Our special guest today in this program is Anemone. She is part of our Christians for Israel international team, and she frequently visits Ukraine and Moldova to support Jewish Holocaust survivors and Jewish elderly. And she is supporting them in many different ways. Anemone, welcome in our program. Would you be so kind to introduce yourself to the people who are watching this program?
Thank you so much. Very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to be part of this work. And it's something that has developed over the years, but I have a background in public affairs, in interpreting and connecting nations, if you will. And it's also a great passion for me to be in the work of where God is restoring His people. And it has a lot also to do with relationships, especially for me as a German. And I've seen wonderful opportunities God has given us to bring healing and comfort to His people in Ukraine and places where maybe not many people have been, many people have paid attention to, where the Holocaust had absolutely devastating effects on the whole country, on the Jewish community there. And I grew up in Eastern Germany, and without opportunities to travel far with many big dreams, and then God opened so many doors, and I feel like I need to do something with the opportunities God has given us, and that includes, has become a major part of my life, to bring comfort, reconciliation, healing, practical help to the Holocaust survivors and Jewish elderly in Ukraine. And that developed out of the programs that were already in place in Ukraine, as our team leader there, Kuhn, kept inviting me to come for some of the trips to help translating with the groups we used to have before Corona, before the war. Used to have many of the supporters from Holland, from Germany, from other countries to see for themselves what is happening on the ground. And so out of that, we started developing specific programs to support elderly people to make their history known and visible for other people in the world, so that people hear the voices of the survivors from Ukraine.
Now, we all know that the terrible war between Ukraine and Russia has been ongoing for almost 3 years now. How does this war impact you, your work, and the team in Ukraine?
You know, I was surprised when I heard people say in Ukraine during my last trip, this war has already lasted longer than World War II for us. And of course, we have a different concept of the dates. But for survivors in Ukraine, when the war started, for them meant 22 June 1941, when the Hitler Germany, the Wehrmacht attacked the Soviet Union. So that was the start of the trauma for them. And by the end of 1943, much of Eastern Ukraine was already liberated by the Red Army. So for many of them, it was a bit over 2 years that they had to endure Nazi occupation. And now they say this war is already longer than what we had to go through at that time, you know. So it's really dragged on for a long time, created a lot of pain. What does it look like for the team? How has it impacted the team? I think apart from the news that we see and hear, all of us, sometimes it's details that you have to be there to experience. You go to bed and you have to have your stuff ready, just in case, because you don't know if you have to take your passport and your cell phone and the cable with the cell phone, your most important items, in the middle of the night and run somewhere. You have the constant sirens, the air alarm, and that is one thing in daytime, but another thing at nighttime. People don't sleep. People haven't slept normal for nearly 3 years. What does it mean in daytime? I hear that there are many, many more accidents than usual. People are worn out, and you have the pressure and the emotions of the war, the fear for loved ones, and that also affects our own team. You know, even the teams in the Jewish communities, we have people that we used to work with, they're on the battlefront now. They're not available the way they used to be. It's hard to plan something. You know, when I was there just a few weeks ago, we were starting to make plans. We go to Kiev visiting these people. This is the schedule. And then I was reminded, don't rely on the plan. It may be that we get stuck somewhere, because if there's an air alarm, traffic may break down because people need to go places. We may have to wait for many hours for huge traffic jams to be over until we can go to the place we plan to go. So there's a lot of insecurity. People don't know if they can implement the plan for tomorrow or after tomorrow. And it's also, we cannot simply go to all the places where we used to visit. You know, we've built relationships with a team over there for over 20 years, all over Ukraine, east and west, north and south. And I've also seen a lot of communities, and not all of them I can still go to. You know, there are places in central western Ukraine where we can still move more or less freely. There are places in now more to the north, the whole area of Sumy after the invasion of Kursk that has created a whole backlash of attacks on northern Ukraine, where we have many beloved people around the Chernihiv area and Sumy area that are now off limits, where we can maybe quickly go, drop food parcels and quickly go back. And then there are areas where we can hardly go at all, like Kherson, some of the Black Sea cities that are either very close to the front line or already in Russian occupied territory, where we have to either let go completely or go through a couple of steps and communities to continue to provide help there. My luggage looks different. I still take the cookies, I still take the shawls, whatever fits in the suitcase, but I have to think about extra battery, power bank, have to think about an additional USB lamp, you know, because when the light goes off, which happens a lot now, your cell phone can only do so much. You need backups of backups to function, not only for food and water, but the electronic communication devices. That's a very important feature. And maybe one last point, we used to be able to focus on the suffering that happened 75, 80 years ago and comfort people about something that was finished, that was in the past, but nobody had asked for forgiveness before. So it was a closed subject. Now we have to provide double comfort. We comfort them over the Holocaust, and we have to comfort them over the war that is ongoing, and nobody knows how it's going to end, and they have children, they have grandchildren on the battlefront, and they don't know which news they will get today or tomorrow. So it's a very tense situation.
So that's a huge impact on the lives of those Jewish Holocaust survivors, because you mentioned the pain in the past and the pain in the current war. Can you say, how does this terrible war, how does it impact their daily life, their way of thinking, their way of feeling, the way they live their daily life, those Jewish elderly?
Some of the practical implementations, the impact of the war depends on where people live. Obviously, there are areas that where people are going through hell, and nobody can imagine what it is like to really have stuff flying around you non-stop, go through non-stop alarms, non-stop sirens, and just know that you may not see tomorrow. You know, that's what some people are going through in the east of the country, in the very north of the country, and the very southeast of the country. But there's something that is affecting all of the people in Ukraine, all of the Holocaust survivors, and that's the constant fear, the stress that you feel you have to do something, but you're not quite sure what you need to do. You hear the air alarm, and in Israel, you know what to do. You go to the safe room. In Ukraine, you're in a little village house, you know, the beautiful wooden ornaments, you know, really beautiful to photograph. Where are you going to run? There's no basement in these little houses. Then you have the cities. Maybe you live on the 9th floor. Where are you going to, how quick can you get from the 9th floor to the basement? And is it safe in the basement? Does it help you to be in the basement if the building collapses? And does it help you to get in the elevator if the electricity gets cut 5 minutes later and you make it stuck in the practical things, you know, but for people it's so, and a lot of the elderly say, we just stay where we are, come what will. If they have a connection with God, they say our lives are in His hands, and there's not much we can do about the situation. It's just try to get through every day and try to exist in the situation. Electricity cuts affect much of the country more and more and may become very significant. This winter, they say in some big cities like Odessa, they may be up to 18 hours out of the day where there's no electricity. Imagine that. A lot of people have electric heating in the modern apartment buildings. That has a huge impact on the quality of life, on anything. Medical support, you know. It was difficult enough before the war for elderly people to get adequate medical support. A lot of it goes out of pocket, but now you have all the wounded coming from the battlefront. Of course, they get priority. And then if you need some surgery that can be postponed until next month or next year, you're on the waiting list much longer. And of course, you also notice the prices. You know, in the beginning, it was still more or less stable. There's help coming into the country, but you now really see it in the prices. You see the currency exchange, you see the heating prices, and some people pay more for energy costs than I pay in my apartment in Germany.
So you can say that we almost cannot imagine how fear is a part of their daily life.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can give one example, we just a few weeks ago visited the community of Poltava, and that was really challenging because just as I was in the airport, I got the message that Poltava had been hit by a terrible strike, and many people dead. And even if everybody else around survived, but people have the shock in their hearts, and it was very, very hard to find words to comfort them, you know. And so we visited one lady, her name is Zoya, and when we came into her apartment, she had this friendly smile on her face, and I thought, oh, that looks like it's going to be an easy visit, you know. She's in a good mood, she's a happy person. And then we sat down and she started sharing her story, and I couldn't believe it, you know. One of the stories where 1941 war started, father goes to the battlefront, mother gets on a train to flee with 4 children. She was 2, and then somewhere on the way, mom goes out to get some hot water to wash the kids. That very moment, the train gets bombed. Mother comes back, sees her oldest son covered by grandpa and grandma, all dead. She looks for the children, cannot find anyone for days. She gives up, goes to the battlefront as a volunteer. In the meantime, little Zoya, who was still alive with her sister and brother, were huddling somewhere in the ruins, get picked up by strangers, get put in an orphanage. In Uzbekistan, there her 2 siblings die of starvation. And so while she's telling the story, she's crying, you know, she kept saying, I'm all alone in this world. Her husband died, her daughter died. So she says, I'm all alone in this world, and sharing these painful memories. That moment, the air alarm goes on. And while she's talking, in the background, we hear the siren screaming. You know, it was almost such a tense situation. And that so symbolizes what these people are going through. She has her memories as a child that destroyed her childhood. And on top of that, she has the air siren, that moment. And it was very painful to share that moment with her, but it was also wonderful because we were in the right place at the right time, putting an arm around her, saying, look, we're not leaving you alone. We brought you some gifts, hot water bottle, a nice hand-knitted shawl from Germany to keep you warm and to keep your heart warm and to remind you that you are not alone. So that's why we need to keep going there or delegate to the team that is on the ground, not just to say you're not alone, but also to be next to them as much as we can, as long as we can, to show them they're not alone.
So it's very important for us to realize how important the comfort is that you and your team can also bring to people. Not only the practical food, the practical help, but also the comfort and the love that you can bring them.
Both goes together, you know, and another one comes to mind, Maya, and when she said where she's from, I was like freezing. She said Bakhmut. You know, Bakhmut is for me a symbol of one of the worst hit cities in eastern Ukraine. That was her home. And as we entered, she says, I wish a rocket would have hit me. I don't want to live anymore. And such a painful situation. But then we go through a few minutes of sitting with her, putting an arm around her. She says, you know, when I came back after the war, I saw the city of Bakhmut being built before my eyes. Now I see the city being destroyed before my eyes. And she fled from Bakhmut to Poltava, same city we visited, and now she's getting some help there. And at the end of our short meeting, she had a smile on her face. And that's what you want to see. That's why we're there. And we invest our energy and the practical help and the emotional support.
And that gives you the inspiration to continue this important work. How do you manage, Anemone, to deliver the essential aid and support to all those people given this difficult situation and the instability of the war?
Yeah, that's a good question. And sometimes I wonder how we can still operate. I didn't think we could still do a lot on that late day in February 2 years ago, and looking how things have been evolving, and it's not like you see a lot of improvement, but I really see the Lord keeping his hands over the team. You know, there's some things that we as a team in general can do ourselves. Some things we support the Jewish communities to do on our behalf. And things that we can do ourselves is packing food parcels, and the demand has been going up and up and up. You know, it becomes more and more important for people to have some food at home, because you don't know what happens tomorrow, to have at least some basic food items, talking tens of thousands for this upcoming winter. And what our team usually does, they go to a city, to the Jewish community, they call people together, and whoever is mobile can come. They deliver the food parcel. People get to take something home. At the same time, we give the information about Israel, about what we can do if they need help with evacuation to other parts of Ukraine, but also to go to Israel, what the options are for that. So it's always intertwined, you know, and that's something that our team does wherever we can go, where it's safe enough, where the community says, yes, we can call people together in the synagogue, we can go to the basement, whatever, we have a facility, we can bring them together. Then there are programs like Meals on Wheels. We don't do everything ourselves, but we empower the Jewish communities. We support them with the funds and we inspire them and help them with the logistics to deliver Meals on Wheels to their needy elderly. That's something we can delegate, where people get meals delivered to their homes. Then there are the evacuations, the Aliyah assistance, you know, wherever possible, we inform people, and oftentimes there are also events where we inform people with a program, with different players, but oftentimes it's also on the go. We visit an elderly lady, we give her some food aid, and at the same time, sometimes we joke, because usually in that age, they're not very keen on packing their things, leaving their old life behind and going to a different country. And those who wanted to, they're basically already gone where they wanted to go. But sometimes jokingly we say, have you ever dreamed about Israel? If you wake up tomorrow morning with a dream to see the Holy Land, here is our phone number, you know. And of course, that also has become much, much harder to say we can bring you to a safe country, because that has also changed. So you really need to have the vision. You need to know that this is where God wants you to be. But it goes hand in hand to provide practical help on the ground, and to also show people the opportunities for Aliyah. And something that we continue doing wherever we can, also with my colleagues in Ukraine, is visiting people, visiting the elderly as much as we can. You know, it's one thing to receive a food parcel through the Jewish community that we packed, that we donated, or medication, or wood for the winter, for the villages. But when we come and we bring some joy to our lives, you know, what I do with my colleague Aliyah a lot in Ukraine is that we look for a city where we haven't been for a while. We call the Jewish community, we say, look, can you organize a nice meal? We pay, you organize, find us some musicians, put a nice event together. We want people to forget the war for a few hours. Bring people together, everybody who can walk, we pay for the taxi, bring them in together in the room. Then we can share a little bit what we do, why we are there, that we want to be next to the Jewish people, surrounding them with our love, with our prayers. And for everybody who cannot come, who's not mobile, we go to the homes. And that has really proven to be very effective. We get a lot of people in one place, so we see a lot of people in a short amount of time. And for them, many have told us, look, this is not much, you know, it's not that expensive. And they say, I will never, ever forget this event. This is something you don't forget for the rest of your life. And it's touching for us, because it's not hard to do, but it means so much for them. So these personal visits and gatherings, just with a little bit of joy, a bit of music, some Jewish melodies, and some encouragement from the promises of God and the prophets, that He will not slumber nor sleep. He will protect, He will restore His people. That's something we can give them. That's very precious.
When we looked at the history of the attitude of Christians towards Jews, it must be very special for them, very touching and also very inspiring for them, that this comfort that you are bringing as a Christian, and in your situation also as a German. Must be special for them.
Yeah, it's a double calling and a double relationship, if you will. As a Christian, we have our Christian history. We all know about that. And even today, you know, not all Christians have an understanding of their Jewish roots and how God sees and loves and appreciates His people. But especially as a German, you know, when I went to Israel as a volunteer after school, when I came back, the last thing I wanted to be was German. And it took me a long time to realize that when we bring our history to God, He can use it for blessing. If it goes through Him, if it goes through the repentance and the reconciliation process, that He can use those people that hurt the most in order to bless the most. And it's actually also in the prophets that it says in Isaiah 60, you know, the sons of those who oppressed you will fall down at your feet and bless you and help you and serve you. And that's where I came to understand there are something that anybody can do from the Christian community, where we come as Americans, Dutch, Australians, from around the world, to bless the Jewish people, which to many of them comes as a shock after everything they have heard in the relationship between Christians and Jews, but especially as a German. And it's my passion to use what God has given me also with my history, with my personal history, to be a tool, an instrument of healing for the Jewish people.
Wonderful, Anemone. And when someone might ask the question, why do you only help Jewish elderly, Jewish Holocaust survivors, what would be your answer?
You know, when we come to Ukraine, when I come to Ukraine, I see a lot. And you see people on the street, and nothing limits me as Anemone to go up to an old lady selling some flowers from her garden to make a living. Actually, I do that occasionally. I put some money from my personal funds into her hands, and I just want to bless her because she's in my way. God put her in my way, and I want to bless her. So that's something I can always do personally, and anybody can personally get involved in blessing other needy people. The sky is the limit, you know. We all need to follow our calling, and Christian for Israel has a calling. And it's in the statute what our target group is. I think we as Christians have a lot to catch up with 2,000 years of anti-Semitism, so we have a lot of homework to do still toward the Jewish people. That doesn't mean that we don't see the other people around. I personally, I'm happy if I meet another organization that serves orphanages in Ukraine, any nationality, or orphans in Moldova. You know, I'm happy when I see organizations with other callings that are helping other groups that are in need. But it's important that we understand our niche, our specific calling, and that we are faithful with that. And for us, that's the Jewish people, after all their suffering, the Holocaust survivors, those that God has called us to serve.
Yeah. And that's also in our name, Christians for Israel.
Yes, yes.
Recently, Anemone, we also started in Moldova, besides Ukraine. How did it start?
Yeah, it's one of the miracles in retrospective that came out of the start of the war in Ukraine. The first few weeks after the war started, we were not focused on visiting people, visiting communities, delivering food parcels. We were concentrated on one thing, getting people out of the country to relative safety. And that meant for us, because of the logistics, to bring many Jewish people that were looking for a safe place, that were looking to go to Israel, bringing them to Moldova as the airspace was closed with the start of the war over Ukraine. Now you have to look for a surrounding country to fly out from there. So Moldova is one of the countries where you can travel out and into Ukraine. And as we were our team was bringing people eventually to Israel through Moldova, we started getting help from local communities, including from rabbis in the capital, in Chisinau, and that made us think there must also be Jewish people somewhere in Moldova. Maybe they're all gone, more or less. Maybe there are still some left. So we started looking into that question and made amazing discoveries. And for them, it was amazing in many places that for the first time, they saw somebody asking the question and caring about them. And for the first time, many of them saw a German who would come back and say, look, we come with a heart of love for the Jewish people. And that was so special for us to discover. It's not a huge country. It's more like a province in Ukraine by the size, a very agricultural country. But there are people with incredibly painful stories. Very similar to Ukraine, a bit different. Geographically, the history was a bit different, but very similar in the degree of pain it caused for those families.
You could think that helping them, supporting them, giving them food in Ukraine and Moldova might keep them in Ukraine and Moldova instead of inspiring them to go on Aliyah to Israel. Or can we say that the work you're doing, the love you're giving them, inspires them to start thinking about preparing to go on Aliyah?
I think it's not one or the other. You know, there are different age groups. There are macro picture and micro picture, the strategic plan that God has with restoring his people in Israel. And then, but there's also a period of time where things happen, people's personal stories, people's age. There are a lot of people who got stuck, if you will, Ukraine or Moldova, because they were caring for a sick relative for many years, and then they became needy and elderly themselves and need help. That's just one example, you know. So there are many reasons why elderly Jewish people remained where they grew up or came back to those places. And I think we can do both. We can keep in mind the big picture that God is restoring his Jewish people in the land of Israel as he promised through the prophets. And we continue helping for anyone who wishes to get our assistance. And we say that, we offer the help. We are not the ones pushing people. We're the ones offering our help. And sometimes you give information, and many years later, people make the call and say, now I'm ready. Or it happens that we bring a food parcel to an elderly lady And then we start talking about the family, and then we realize there's a grandchild in his or her teenage years, and we give them ideas about the programs that are available for Israel. And for some of the elderly, maybe they won't make it to Israel, but maybe we have that one opportunity to show them that there are Christians caring for them and loving them. And maybe that's what they need in that moment. And we have a very limited period of time left for that, for many of them. And so precious if we can use that opportunity. And especially in Moldova, what's interesting for me, almost every person we visited, they say, I'm the last one left, or I have one more sister and brother somewhere else around here. But most of the younger generation representatives are already in Israel. A bit less in Ukraine, because Ukraine used to do better economically. But I get the feeling that in the early 90s, most people who were mobile made Aliyah from Moldova. And so we continue to do both. We help with Aliyah, and we help people who need our help where they're at.
And you and your team assisted over 6,000 Jews in Ukraine to go on Aliyah over the last years. You also assisted some Jewish elderly to go on Aliyah to Israel. And recently you started visiting these elderly in Israel. What does that mean? What does it mean for them when you come to Israel and visit them in their new houses there?
Yeah, it's really also something new that has developed over the past few years. I always loved going to Israel, but now it's connected with the programs that we do, and also came out of what we did and continue doing in Ukraine, that we realized in the past we encouraged, helped people, prepared them for Aliyah, then we waved them goodbye because we knew they were in good hands in Israel. And the people who have come to Israel over the last nearly 3 years since the war started, they come with terrible experiences out of Ukraine, some with very few items that they could put in a plastic bag and just carry along with them. And almost all of them are leaving relatives behind. So they come out of a traumatic experience. We've built a relationship with them over the years because they've been in our support programs. They get to Israel, and we realized we cannot simply drop them and say, have a nice day, So, or in positive terms, we have an opportunity to continue filling a need, to give them the feeling that they're not left alone when they arrive in Israel. So we started looking who can work with us there. And one of the communities that is represented by a rabbi is in Israel is the community of Mariupol, which was almost completely destroyed, the synagogue and all the infrastructure of the community. Many people were able to make it to Israel, and the rabbis built up a network in Israel providing for the people from his town, and also we started working with him to establish a visiting program so that those people that we knew from before, that they have somebody checking on them and bringing a nice gift once in a quarter, Once people get to Israel, they don't need food to keep them from starvation. They also don't need somebody to buy them the most necessary medicines because they're in a social system where they are taken care of with the basics, let's put it that way. But they need that touch of somebody who knew them from before, and to see that they are not alone. And many times when I come and visit them, now also with Alina, they know her from before, they know me from before. And when we come through the door, it's like a family member came, and they're so happy. They're in tears because a piece of home came back to their new home for them, and they get hope, that there's a future for them, that somebody is surrounding them, that they're not alone. So it's more the emotional support that is needed there, and we can give part of that to them.
That's a wonderful thing that you do for them, bringing that comfort, bringing that specific love, and they feel that you bring that love as a Christian. It must be very special for them. Going back to Ukraine and Moldova, Anemone, the demand for your support, your help, is that a bit stable over the last months, or can you see an increase or a decrease in demand?
The longer the war lasts, the more it drains all the resources. In the beginning, some infrastructure facilities were hit. Now they're saying that the majority of the energy infrastructure is destroyed. So what's left is just a few plants to produce electricity, and people have to live with that. So that's just one example, and also because of the increasing rise of prices, that makes life more and more difficult. Also, younger people find it more difficult to survive because there are no jobs, because there's no safety, and you don't have a safe environment where you can build up a company. And so oftentimes the younger generation that used to support the older generation, they are not able to do that anymore. And so we get a lot more requests for any type of help, with medicines, with the meals, with hot meals. And part of it is to keep the community together, to give some comfort, but oftentimes it's just the basic need of really having some food in the house that increasingly people cannot afford anymore. Because the longer the war lasts, the more expensive it becomes, the higher the taxes, the more difficult to still get something, buy something. And yes, the need has been increasingly rising, and the need is so huge that we really also started looking harder at which category of people is the most needy. What are our priorities? Maybe we can cut a little bit here and move some of the help over there, because there's just so many needing help for us. And it's a unique opportunity for us to stand with our Jewish friends in times of need. We want to help everybody, and we can only do as much as God provides through our supporters.
So the important work of our team, of your team in Ukraine and Moldova, will remain for the time being, will remain highly important, Anemone.
Absolutely, yes.
Do you have a final message? Something you want to share, want to say to those who are watching this program?
Every time has its challenges and opportunities. There was a time when we could do trips to Ukraine with groups. When Corona came, this time was over. But I'm glad we maximized the opportunities we had, so then people had the memories and understanding of how Ukraine operates, what happened there, how big the need is. And now we have different challenges and opportunities. And we see that God is restoring his people. We see a physical dimension of that, and that's the gathering of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. But there's also the soul of the Jewish people that God wants to restore, healing the wounds, binding up the wounds that have been cut by centuries of anti-Semitism, by the Holocaust, even by the war going on today. And God is putting, in a way, the balm of healing in our hands. Can be our words, can be our donations, can be our prayers, can be our hearts that we are sharing with those people. And we don't have to be on the ground for that. Thank God we have a wonderful team on the ground, and not everybody can go to Ukraine, that's understood. But we can delegate. We can give what we can give from here. Some of us may be able to go there. Some of us just keep them up in prayer. And I'm amazed how the work can continue, and God keeps our team safe. And that's not just a nice saying. I really believe that every prayer is adding to the safety of our team in all those dangerous places and giving the emotional fuel to keep going. So that's very important. The practical help, the spiritual help, the emotional support, sometimes just sending a message of encouragement. And we have the opportunity now. Many Holocaust survivors are still alive. Many second-generation Holocaust survivors who went through similar pain are still alive and waiting for us to cross their path and bring that light of hope. And I want to use the opportunity that I have, and I want to encourage all of us to use what God is putting in our hands today. Maybe He allowed us to grow up in free countries with all the opportunities, financial opportunities, spiritual opportunities that we have to be a blessing for Jewish people. And I consider it a privilege to assist him a little bit as he is restoring his people.
Thank you so much, Anemone. It's very impressive that you say that every single prayer contributes to a blessing. Sometimes people might think, when we see all the wars in the world, that you might think, what does it help my single prayer? It's useless for me to pray. But you say every single prayer is contributing to God's blessing, also people in Ukraine and Moldova. Thank you for coming to our studio. Thank you for sharing this very important, touching message with all of us. And may the Lord bless you. May the Lord bless your team in Ukraine and Moldova. May the Lord bless the Jewish people.
Yes.
Thank you for watching this program. When you want to read more information or watch more information, you can visit our website c4israel.org. Thank you again, and may the Lord bless you all.